I've always found it fascinating when a band will have more than one lead singer. Having two totally different vocal timbres in your band dramatically increases the range of tone that can be achieved by having more than one singer handle all the vocal duties. Not to mention all the harmonies and different feels that you can achieve by having two totally different vocal tones in the same band. Tonight I would like to look at some of my favorite bands that have more than one lead singer. Two actually being the magic number here. I won't be looking at bands that have three or more lead singers because at that point I feel like you might as well be listening to a compilation or a mixtape. It just gets a little bogged down when you have more than two lead singers in a band. I also won't be looking at bands that have one singer and one rapper, so sorry Linkin Park, you will not make this list. So let's take a look. This is Dancing with Ghosts. The first band that comes to mind when I think of bands with two separate singers is Blink-182. You could divide up this band's catalog and it would almost be split right down the middle between Tom DeLonge and Mark Hoppus sharing leads. Both singers have had hits with their individual voices being at the forefront, and both have completely different yet somehow complementary vocal tones. Bassist Mark Hoppus has a more baritone, garden variety pop-punk vocal style, while guitarist Tom DeLonge has a higher, more nasally Southern California vocal tone. Both singers have also done solo records, but they work best when they're together. Rest in peace, Blink-182. Bring back Tom! The next band that comes to mind with two completely different singers is Pink Floyd. Bassist and conceptual visionary Roger Waters handled quite a few of the Floyd's vocals in their heyday with his unpolished, almost punk rock delivery. But it was David Gilmour's velvety smooth, psychedelic croons that really won over the fans. Not to say Gilmour couldn't sing with some grit when he needed to. Songs like Money and Young Lust saw Gilmour get pretty grungy vocally. Roger Waters' vocals seem to function more as an embodiment of a character in the song rather than a traditional vocalist trying to deliver a good performance. Waters would be playing a character and singing as such, which would then set up David Gilmour for those soaring sing-along choruses. They had a great dynamic together when they weren't trying to kill each other. Yeah, these two guys do not like each other. R.E.M. is a band that most people would not think has two lead singers, but even Eddie Vedder, during R.E.M.'s induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, acknowledged bass player Mike Mills as, quote, the second lead singer. Though Mills didn't sing lead on many songs in R.E.M.'s career, his backup vocals are iconic to the band's sound. Mike Mills' nasally, unorthodox vocal tone somehow locked in perfectly with lead singer Michael Stipe's Georgia-tinged baritone. R.E.M. would not be who they are without the vocal sound of Mike Mills. Alice in Chains is probably the best example of two singers who were meant to sing together. Lead singer Lane Staley and guitarist Jerry Cantrell made some of the best rock harmonies that came out of the 1990s. Lane Staley's voice cut through your ears like a buzzsaw, and Jerry Cantrell was the dark, brooding foundation that came together to make something that was truly powerful and haunting. Many times when the two singers would harmonize, it was impossible to tell who was singing which part, which is just a testament to how well their voices complemented each other. In fact, I don't think Jerry Cantrell gets as much credit as he deserves. He's just as much of the vocal sound of Alice in Chains as Lane Staley was. Okay, in full disclosure, I've never been the biggest Kiss fan. However, I did recently start listening to them more, and I realized that bassist Gene Simmons sings quite a bit in this band. And he's terrible. I'm sorry, but this guy is like the guy in the band that wants to be the lead singer and has no business doing so. He's a great showman and an adequate bassist, but he has no business in front of a microphone. His guttural, cartoony singing voice just screams, "I'm trying way too hard to be something I'm not." Paul Stanley, the second lead vocalist and rhythm guitar player in the band, has a much more traditional classic rock-style vocal sound. Gene Simmons is so bad that Paul Stanley sounds amazing by comparison. Why was Paul not singing on every song in this band? Paul is leaps and bounds more of a singer than Gene Simmons will ever be, and it's a shame that Gene Simmons somehow wormed himself onto the lead of so many Kiss songs. On a side note, Peter Criss, the band's original drummer, was also a decent vocalist, but he didn't sing on enough songs for me to consider him a lead singer of the band. Supertramp is an English prog rock band that is another great example of a band that has two singers that sound completely different from each other. So much so that I wouldn't blame anybody for thinking it was two completely different bands on the same album. Rick Davies was the baritone soul singer of the group, and Roger Hodgson was the high-pitched, quirkier singer in the band. These two styles fit together well, and they offered a lot of variety when listening to their albums. One of my favorite newer bands, even though they've been around for almost 20 years, Arcade Fire is one of the only groups on this list whose singers are a man and a woman duo. Male vocalist Win Butler handles most of the vocal duties with his deep, raw, punk-inspired vocal delivery, with his wife, French name, Regine Chasson, contributing very high and at times shrill vocal parts. Though Regine may not be seen traditionally as a good singer, I like her contributions. They are the spice that adds that extra bit of interest to Arcade Fire's music, although, admittedly, sometimes she can go a little overboard and I have to hit fast forward. When people think of Depeche Mode, they think of David Gaughan's deep, trance-like baritone, but many people forget about the genius that is Martin Gore. Martin Gore does virtually everything in the band as far as being a multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and second vocalist to David Gaughan's more well-known timbre. Some of the songs Martin Gore has sang on have become hit songs in their own right, and his vocal ability is often understated. Gore's voice is more delicate. He tends to have a slightly higher vocal register than David Gaughan, and he can usually be heard in the background of many of Depeche Mode's songs. Much like Alice in Chains, it's sometimes hard to differentiate the two singers apart, but that, to me, is one of the many interesting aspects of having two singers in a band. Well, my microphone decided to shit the bed, and I didn't find out about it until editing this video, so I'm just going to do a voiceover of this video right now. Well, those are my favorite bands with two singers. I know I left many bands out, the most glaring omission being the Beatles, but these are the bands that I personally love. So let me know in the comments below what bands you like that have multiple singers, or do you even like bands with more than one singer? Maybe you just want the same vocal on every song. Until next time, have a good rest of your night.